So I think we can, here, is this on?
Good, flip the button right there, right on the head, right on the head.
On the head? Okay. Better? Okay. Is that better? Okay. So I hope to say something, just take a couple of minutes to say something I think is important to be said. A couple of us in the state are really under attack now and we'll lose our licenses, and I'm sure if it goes the way that they have it planned, that's what will happen. It's because we're practicing mercury-free dentistry and wanting to remove the silver fillings, and the boards are opposed to this idea. And so we feel that we may be sort of a test case. If we go down, it may be that the rest of you are going to go down a lot faster if we do, because it'll set a precedent here in California and for the whole nation. So we want to make a pretty hard stand. And some things that Vaughn wanted me to tell you, I'll try to do, because Vaughn wanted me to talk to you, and he certainly knows a lot more about it than I do, but I'll try to do the best I can, and he'll have to follow up. But so if we lose our license, it's going to set a precedent, and we don't want to do that, so we're going to fight. And we may lose a lot of our personal property in the process of it, at least I might, and I'm sure anybody else involved in it might do as directly as we are, but it doesn't, that's not the issue. The issue is, I believe we can win. And we have to fight and stand where we are, or we're going to lose it all, and we'll set back the whole history of this program a number of years, I feel, if we don't succeed with this particular issue right now. So we're going to fight it, and Bill will tell you more about that. We need consumer support, and I don't think this battle's ever going to be won unless we get consumers behind us, because we can't get heard by the media. They don't listen to us. They don't want to publish. They don't want to publish what we write. They don't want to put on the news what we say. And so we're going to have to get the consumers out there, and if they make enough noise, they do listen to consumers. And DAMS, that most of you may have heard, if you haven't, DAMS is a group back in, headquartered, I think, in Pennsylvania, Illinois, I guess. Louise Herbeck is the chairman of DAMS, and Downers Grove, Illinois. And she started this organization, and these people are victims of what amalgam has done to people. When amalgam has been removed, these people recover. She had multiple sclerosis, and she's doing very well now. We have a case of another girl named Dallas Petit here in California who's doing very well. And she's headed a chapter here in California, except near Fresno someplace. There's another girl down south in California. But they're throughout the United States, and if we can get these people motivated and give them some ammunition and encouragement, they're willing to work and help lead the fight. And I think that's going to be extremely important, we feel, in their strategy to win the case, because if we get enough followers behind them, we'll be able to get the media focused on them, and then once the issue is out, it becomes a state and perhaps a nationwide awareness. The facts are becoming so obvious now with the new sheep research and other things. There's just no question that we're on the right side of the scientific evidence. But people have to hear it. So, and the dentists have to hear it too, and maybe this will be one way they can hear it. So, what Vaughn is saying, that we need to have a lobby in the state of California supporting the cessation. First of all, the commons consent, or that is consent, informed consent, I'm trying to say. Informed consent, the law should be passed in the state where dentists are required to inform the patients about the hazards of silver fillings before they're placed, and so they have a choice. These laws are being presented in Alaska, in Illinois, in North Carolina, and also Michigan and Colorado at this present time. And there's a couple of bills in the Senate of this state are being prepared to go to the Senate, and I don't have enough details to tell you very much about it, except it is in a Senate form right now in the state, and one of them is for informed consent on this issue, and the other one is to provide freedom for the health practitioner. So both these bills are vitally important, but they're not going to get any place unless we have a lobby. And Vaughn has felt that it's going to take, as his research shows, it's going to take some commitment of money to hire one, of course, and I don't know how much it costs, but he would like to see each person who's willing, and I'll probably Vaughn may approach you, he's better at this thing than I am, but some of us have been approached already and willing to give $1,000 a year to this lobbying effort so that we can get something passed in the state of California. And that will be one issue. And then get the consumers involved in another public issue area. And then we're going to also do something that Bill Moore will probably talk to you about tonight on an issue directly with the state board. We're going to take issue with them, and we're going to do something that hasn't been done in the state before. And then we'll have the consumers come in behind us. Now, a lot of us have patients we treated if you've been amalgam-free and you've been taking this stuff out of people's mouths, you've seen a lot of patient recovery. And you have some of those patients who are ecstatic followers of yours. They're willing to do anything to help support you in this cause. In my office, I started a list, and so I talked to the patient if they're willing to become involved and explain to them that we're organizing a consumer advocate group in California to stop the use of amalgam. And if they want to be involved in some way, would they please just give their name to my secretary as they leave? And so we're forming a list in my office, so we know those people are people that would like to be involved. We also know people who've treated before who we know will, and we're going to follow up and call those people. But if we could each of us get 50 people, for example, and maybe get a force of a few hundred people in this state, when we have the board hearing, that would be a time that they could make a lot of public noise and get public attention. All these other issues that are issues in the public, that's how they get on camera, and that's how the nation hears about these things. Pro-choice and all these kind of things. And we've got people just excited about this issue as they are about those issues. We just have to get them organized. So we need to find out who those people are and get it organized. And so we need to identify each one of us, I think, our patients who are willing to get involved. And I think that's going to be extremely important. And we don't have a lot of time. We don't know how much time we have, but we don't have much. We need to start on it right away if you're willing to get involved in this thing. So another thing I wanted to mention was I'm going to propose this group. I've been using this little logo here. It says silver fillings, skull and crossbone, silver fillings at the top, 50% mercury at the bottom. Now, if we're going to do something, I think it always helps to have a logo of some kind, so whenever people see this, they know it's the amalgam issue in the state of California or the state of the issue as far as it goes across the country. And what I was going to do in my office is take this, but I have these in the telephone directory I've been using for years, right at the top of my ad, and below that I say mercury-free dentistry, non-toxic dentistry, and I list what I do. So this is one of the challenges the state board have against me, that I'm holding myself out different than other people. Therefore, I'm saying that I'm better than they are because I'm offering something different. But I don't care about that. The issue is, I think this would be very important significant because it does tell people, first of all, that silver fillings are 50% mercury and it's deadly poison. I was going to include along this with this something on the side in the writing around it someplace saying a dentist against the use of silver mercury fillings. And then the other one would say consumers against the use of silver mercury fillings. So if we have something like this, and I'm going to make a rubber stamp in my office so that whenever any mail goes out, we're going to stamp this in red ink right on it, the big bold letters in front of every envelope that goes out of our office, so that we can get stuff like this circulating around the state. And if we all kind of had some consensus about this or something that we could do, we'd have a logo that represented our movement. I think that's important. Anything you do, you need to just have instant recognition. So I have these, and I'll just pass them out to you as I finish now. And I think that's probably all I have to say. Thank you.
Bill Moore came up with Mark, and Bill is an attorney and a physician both, and a defender of people in the health professions, naturopaths, homeopaths, MDs, and dentists. And he comes from the eclectic school, and many of the laws that he'd mentioned before, many of the laws that are on the statutes and on the books in various states actually protect physicians that are doing something that they choose to do, the heretics, And we have to become familiar with those and use those laws for our benefit. And hopefully Bill will tell us some of those things tonight. It's all yours.
All right, let's see. We got some stuff to pass out. If the gentleman is kind enough to pass it out. This is a sort of tongue-in-cheek excursion into the history of mercury in American healthcare. And this was done as a part of the analysis of this whole matter to get into focus. One of the things when you start a war, you want to know who is your enemy. Right? And part of the analysis of the case is who is the enemy. Turns out to be the same old enemy that everybody's had and Gary over here is very familiar with, damn AMA. Right? Now, these boys just can't make it without mercury. That's right. They have always loved mercury. Little by little, they've had to retreat from mercury. The environmentalists have been after them, this, that, and the other. But they never have worried up to now because you guys were running around slipping the mercury to the patients for them. As you see in the paper, Paracelsus, a famous Renaissance physician and alchemist, tried hundreds of times to transmute mercury into gold. And as an alchemist, he never succeeded, but he succeeded magnificently as a physician. He found out the philosopher's stone to transmute mercury into gold, put it in the patient. And of course, some bitch will get so sick that he'll come back time after time after time and bring you his gold. And 500 years of allopaths have been following that ever since then. It is their sheet anchor, and they can't get, they're scared to death. If you don't put the mercury in the patients, half of the boogers will starve to death. Because if you get the mercury out of them, then they're going to be, the American public is going to start getting well. And these guys are scared to death. So they got enough troubles already. Any of you read their journals? You ever read New England Journal? Week before last, Timothy Johnson. You know who he is? The TV doctor from ABC?
Yeah.
Johnson writes the sounding board. He says, I never thought I'd say this in print, but thank God I don't have to depend on practicing medicine for a living anymore. And he says, our best medical schools are not having to advertise for students. The older doctors are trying to take early retirement and find administrative posts or even become TV doctors, and we don't know what the hell's happening. And I get all these letters from doctors saying, why the hell does the public hate us? To which I say, hell, we don't hate them. We love them like we do Jesse James and Billy the Kid and Clyde, Bonnie and Clyde and all those people. They're rascals, and we always, you know, turn our thieves into folk heroes, and in another 30 or 40 years we'll remember the allopath of the 20th century as the great thief and rascal that he was, when he's replaced by some real doctors. But right now, these guys' world is crumbling, and I'm serious. Their whole system is breaking down around their ears, and what you gentlemen are seeing is their death throes. Their system is in a state of accelerating collapse. They've had a good system since 1910. They bought it in 1910. Are you all familiar with how they got there? Or you don't need me to go into this boring lecture about the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and all that. Well, they blew it, and they blew it because of 3 laws that you can't get through the legislature. These are natural laws. They're laws of monopoly. Right? There are 3 laws that refer to monopolies. In the first place, you can't monopolize a diversified market. Before you can monopolize anything, you have to standardize it. So they had to standardize medicine in order to monopolize it. And the second, whenever you have a monopoly, the quality of goods and services in the monopolized market always goes down, and the price always goes up. This can't be legislated. These are laws of economics that just can't be changed. The first thing they had to do was try to monopolize, when they tried to monopolize, was standardized medicine. And I heard Gary mention their consensus medicine. That's a monopolist tool. 3 or 4 of us have gotten together and decided that this is what all the rest of you ought to do. We have reached the consensus for you. The government's even there. They have consensus conferences now that they pay for with you and my tax dollars. Right? Now, they got together and they wrote the cookbook. They sort of left you gentlemen out. I mean, they didn't figure that you were doctors, right? You're a dentist. But they slipped up when you started getting scientific, and they got licenses, and they said, well, if we're going to give licenses to the MDs, we better give them to the dentists too. And they said, well, we have to set some standards up for these guys. And they started making dentists go to school. And you had to spend 4 years in school, and I'm not trying to denigrate your profession, but it don't take 4 years to learn what you guys do for a living. You had to spend a couple of years doing something else, and so to save money, they made you go to school with the medical students, and you learned something about medicine, and all of a sudden you became physicians like they are. Only they didn't think of it that way. And as long as your first association broke up back in the 1850s and you formed the American Dental Association, which agreed, the old association was against mercury. The ADA was for mercury, and they said, wow, these are wonderful fellows. They're going to slip the mercury to the patients, and we're going to get the gold. So let's welcome them. They even allowed dentists to join the American Medical Association. They tried to soak you up like they're trying to soak up the osteopaths right now, like they almost did soak up the homeopaths and eclectics around 1910. For some reason, that didn't work. And you should be glad, because when they go tumbling down, you're not necessarily going to have to go with them. Right? The public doesn't think of you the way they think of them, right? They think they're gods, and the public knows they're a bunch of goddamn thieves. And when they go, you don't have to go with them unless you want to ally yourself with them that closely. You can just stand beside and say, not me. My parents were married when I was born. I'm not an MD. And, but they seriously, they need mercury. And they are the ones that are putting the pressure on you guys. It's the toxicity issue. Now, do you all know what an allopath is? Do you really know how they got started being allopaths, what they do for a living, how they got that way? They started off about 100 AD as a group of demonologists. And their firm conviction was that all disease is caused by an invading entity. They still believe that. And that in order to get the demon or invading entity out of the sufferer, they had to do 4 things. They had to call it out by name. Then they had to commit ritual mutilation, burning, and poisoning on the patient until they got so uncomfortable with the demon left. And they hadn't changed a damn bit in the last 2,000 years. They still do just that, right? And the first toxin that they got, and the one they'll always love, is mercury. It's a proven producer. For 500 years, they've been creating disease with mercury, or you've been helping them do that. And these are ill-defined, vague diseases that nobody really knows what to do, so you can treat this booger forever until he dies. And you'll never reach a diagnosis. You can hit him and come back, and you can refer him to your neighbor, to your first cousin. You can play the gypsy roundelay where everybody gets a shot at him and his insurance thing. And this makes for Porsches and third vacation homes and great prosperity, and their entire fortune depends on you guys keeping them sick, right? If you ever stop their organ, there's enough people after them already. If you take their income away from them by refusing to make the patient sick for them, and horror of all horrors, taking the mercury out so that they get well, hell, they'll have to start becoming shoe repairmen and pick up garbage and do honest things like that for a living. I mean, it's already happening. You know, the ladies already tore the OBs down. They're the first allopathic specialty to fall to a social movement. They're on the run. They can't get insurance. They don't want insurance. All over the country, they're refusing to deliver babies anymore, which I think is good. They didn't have any business doing it in the first place. That's something ladies ought to do. No man has ever had a baby, and until he has, he doesn't understand the process. And the midwives are beating the hell out of them all over the country. And I'll tell you in a few minutes what we did to the OBs in Georgia for the midwives. I mean, we really got them running. They're hiding, they're getting indicted everywhere, they're quitting, they're leaving the state, just because we, you know, a few lawyers, a few midwives, a few consumers got on them and tore them up. And in that, I want to tell you how you can protect yourselves, because you can do the same thing that the midwives did. You know, there is an organ of the federal government that is supposed to protect us from monopolists. It's called the Federal Trade Commission. And that's how we started with the midwives. We wrote a letter to the Federal Trade Commission and complained. And they came down and they said, what are you people upset about? So we told them. And this story started at the University of Georgia. A little midwife there named Debbie. She's a professor at the University of Georgia School of Nursing, where she teaches OB nursing. And in her spare time, she does home deliveries. And since the the nursing school is on the main campus at the University of Georgia, which is in Athens. It's not over in Augusta where the medical school is. They use the local hospitals for their teaching hospitals under contract. So Debbie comes bringing her class over there one day. Nurses are going to, you know, help out the patients there and learn a little something. And this female OB jumps on her and says, "Well, I guess you're over here practicing medicine without a license again, you rotten bitch, you." And, you know, it just, the claws came out and everything. Debbie said, "I've had enough of your shit, and I'm going to hire a lawyer and sue you." So she hired a lawyer, and this lawyer made a mistake of suing her for libel. And finally, Debbie went around the country, and she ended up talking to me and a couple other lawyers, and said, "No, you don't want to sue her for libel, you know, sue her in an antitrust case. She's trying to put you out of business. You can't do that." So she said, "Well, come over and talk to us." She wanted me to represent her. I said, "No, you've already got a lawyer. You've already paid him a fee. Let me represent some of your patients and your friends." Well, the entire faculty of the you know, liberal arts college, University of Georgia, came from right around here. They all graduated from Berkeley. They came by their credentials as protesters, pretty honest. So we started, right? We just went over there and plotted this. First, all the OBs in Athens are along one street. We got a parade permit. One day they look up, and here's a whole bunch of guys and ladies parading in the street, putting signs on their lawn. This is the house that jacked up fees built. The 2 and 3's been cut by the big parade. They just held a parade there all day. Nobody could get in and out. Bitching about the C-section rate. And of course, this little allopath came out and says, "Now you're being very unfair to us. We get all of the C-sections from 10 counties around here dumped on us. And we get do them all these doctors out in the country don't do them anymore. So what are we going to see about that?" So we went to the Bureau of Vital Statistics and we pulled their birth rates for all 10 counties. And of course, the highest C-section rate was right there where they lived, because we had the mothers from the place of residence. We noticed another thing. Each year as the birth rate falls, the C-section rate went up. And this little bitchy OB that jumped on the nurse had a 62% C-section rate. So we filed an intervention in that lawsuit that she had going in the federal court. That's the first thing under the antitrust laws. Consumers have a right to intervene in these suits if their interests are protected. So we came in with 2,000 people screaming their interests needed protecting in this federal court. And we wanted the C-section business stopped, and we wanted these OBs to quit picking on these gals. And it was a big, thick lawsuit. And every newspaper around there had a copy of it the week before we filed it, but they couldn't use it until the day we filed it. And we had, you know, a chapter in there on each one of these OBs and carefully explaining his C-section rate each year as his income fell and his C-section rates went up. It's called income leveling, right? And 2 or 3 of them had to leave town a couple of days after we filed this lawsuit. Federal Trade Commission's on them. They may get indicted. And the only place you can get anybody to take care of delivering a baby over around Athens right now is a couple of midwives, right? Now, what we did was we used the law, right? We used the law to make these monopolists stop picking on this little midwife. But she didn't pick the fight, they did. And we very effectively used consumers to file lawsuits, to parade, to scream. And, you know, the judge wasn't about to pick a fight with all these consumers. He just says, "Mr. Moore, will you see if we can control your client?" I said, "God, Your Honor, 2 weeks ago they were rioting in the streets, and I got them in here filing a lawsuit. I thought I was doing pretty good." He says, "Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good." And they're still raising hell. You know, they're in all the magazines. Now, that's the way you have to go after these people, right? If they're tormenting you, blindside them. Never talk about the quality issue with them ever again. That's a mistake. Never talk about quality. Every time they open their mouth, say, "What does it cost, doctor? What does it cost? How come health care in this country cost $611 billion last year? Can you explain that? Can you tell me why everything you do costs more money every year?" And the more he says about consensus measures, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about the cost. Tell me about your third Mercedes. I want to hear about the cost. Why are you guys ripping us off? Why are you guys ripping us off? We can do it a whole lot cheaper. I don't say we can do it a whole lot better. We all know we can do it a whole lot better. We can do it a whole lot cheaper. And consumers understand that too, right? Consumers really understand the cost issue. The debate from now on ought never to be on the quality issue, never on the efficacy issue, it always be on the cost issue. You know, how long are you guys going to wait before you bankrupt the nation? You're already costing 3 times what the national defense budget is. Even the president in his State of the Union address addressed the issue. We've got to do something about the staggering cost of health care. Well, the only thing we can do about the staggering cost of health care is undo this monopoly. And people will start to see that when you start to explain it to them, right? Once you destandardize so they can't monopolize, that is, you reintroduce competition, the price will go down and the quality will come back up. I represent a number of organizations that are dedicated to doing this. Now, I'm dedicated to doing it in the courts, in front of the legislatures, in front of administrative agencies, or in the newspapers, or any other way you can do it. You need to do all of these things. You need to do what I call the 5 ion theory. That's organization, education, publication, legislation, and litigation. These 5 IONS are the things that you need to do to win. And you need to do not one or the other, you need to do all of them all the time. Never shut up, never give them a chance. jump up every time you get a jump in their face and call them what they are. And quit enriching them. Quit putting mercury in their patients' mouths and making them rich. Because every time you put mercury in some patient's mouth, you're making 2 allopaths richer. Because that patient will end up in one of their offices. They don't come back to you guys very often. I mean, Hal Huggins is the only guy I know that's made bold enough to try to treat what he was causing, right? Most of the time, you put it in, and it stays in, and they mine the gold, right? You put in the silver, and they mine the gold. And they have been doing it for 500 years, and they won't stop until somebody makes them do it. You're their last hope. I mean, the only mercury that they've got left is thimerosal. And that's in such small concentrations, it's almost homeopathic mercury, not even be taking some of the symptoms away. They took mercurochrome away from them. You know, they took ammoniated mercury away from them. They're taking it out of the food, they're taking it out of the agricultural things. The only place that it's left is in dentistry. And don't think they're going to give up that precious source without a fight. So who's helping them? Who's putting on the fight? You all know about the Wilk case where the chiropractor sued the AMA? Okay. And Wilk started, the AMA had a Department of Investigation and Council on Quackery. And about the time that they got the judge getting heavy with them, those lawyers called those guys in the middle of the night and said, I don't know what these are, but get them the hell out of here, man. I want these guys out of town, and I want all these files out of this building. Because your counsel on quackery is that horrible word, anti-competitive, and the judge is liable to put your ass in jail if he catches you do that. So get them out of town now. So we got all these files, and they sent them out here to California to Loma Linda, to a guy that I call Jug Ears Jarvis. You know Jug Ears, Gary? The National Council Against Health Fraud, right? Which is nothing but a front for the AMA Department of Quackery. Now, I brought a whole bunch of exhibits to show you, and I can't show you because you don't have a projector here, but I went through the Washington overhead projector. Okay. There's a guy named Doty in New York. He's the chairman of the board of the New York chapter of the National Council Against Health Fraud. He published an article in the Washington Post 3 or 4 years ago talking about dental quackery. And he listed all of the things in there as quackery that I would look for in a dentist if I wanted to go see one, right? I mean, when I read it, I said, God damn, I wish one of these quacks would move to Savannah so I wouldn't have to go out of town to find a dentist. I mean, I like guys that understand about TMJs and amalgam-free dentistry and cranial osteopathy and all that. I believe in all those things myself. But he listed all these things. Then, a year later, the ADA News wrote almost the same article. Right? And then 6 months after that, the ADA Journal comes out with a 12-page article, and the back thing list has got the pictures of Jug Ears Jarvis and Steve Barrett and all. The only one they missed is old Vic Herbert. Right? All the rest of them are in there telling you guys, or your profession, what is quackery. Yeah, homeopathy, yeah. Herbology, phytotherapy, all these things that I presume you gentlemen believe in. Now, who are they doing this for? Why does the National Council Against Health Fraud give a damn what you do? They don't until they're asked to. They were sent there by the AMA because the AMA gives a very vital damn about what you do. If you quit making their patients sick for them, half of them will be out of business. And all the staffers in Chicago will lose their jobs, and the pharmaceutical companies will have to go find something else to do to make a living. You are the king, the linchpin for their whole sickness empire. You are the last source of toxicity that's left to them, right? That the environmentalists can't get to. Yes, sir.
I wonder, do you have them renters in our neighborhood up there in Oklahoma? Do you guys know where the bodies are buried? Have you got the documents that you see?
Well, we got some of them, and we know where to get the rest of them, right? You know.
Because that would sure help a lot of us if you did.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got some of them. I'm sure Gary's got some of them. Joe Lisa's got tons of them. I went to the Scientologists. They've got them, right? They're the ones that stole them in the first place, right? Do you know?
What?
Huh? You know who the Scientologists are?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Don't know the issue. What's this about?
Well, I'm talking about the evidence, about the connection between the National Council Against Health Fraud and the AMA and the ADA. right?
You missed his question. His question was, can you prove any of this? That was his
Can you
question.
prove it? These innuendos are just innuendos until you can say, look, we've got copies of the checks. Here's your agreements. We went to the board in Kansas, and when you give your financial report, you list the AMA, da-da-da-da, as your contributor.
Well, the most damning evidence, in my opinion, that we've got
Yeah.
is the minutes of the Conference on on Control of Health Care Information. Right? This was the AMA, the ADA, the FDA, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Association, Consumer, Consumer Reports, what is it, the Better Business Bureau, a whole bunch of private and public organizations have had a meeting, and like all bureaucrats, they had to keep the meetings, the minutes, who paid for it, who made these suggestions, and they were all in the AMA's files. And when the Scientologists struck back and sent some of their people in to get jobs at the AMA and copy their files, they copied all that, and they brought them out. And they gave them to Wilk and the plaintiffs in the case in Illinois. And there's, 4 or 5 filing cabinets full of that will put in evidence in that case. Now they're sealed, they can be unsealed. You can go to the judge and say, I've got the same case over here, Your Honor, and I need access to those files, and you can get those things. I've got some copies of them, and I know how to get the rest of them. Joe Lisa's got some copies of them. This conspiracy has been going on for years, and we can run an audit trail about their files and everything that happened, right from Chicago to Loma Linda to Barrett up in Pennsylvania to the guy over in, what's his name, Renner
Renner in
and
Kansas City.
Big Herbert and all of that. They're all tied into this. Now, I don't know about Big Herbert and these guys. They may simply be, deluded, misguided people. I don't know if they're getting paid off or not. I think some of them are just on an ego trip. But it doesn't make much difference if the guy is bad or dumb. If he's stepping on your liver, you got to get his foot out of it, right? And but they're dupes, right? It's the same wonderful people that have brought you all of these other things. It's the AMA, and really the AMA is a dupe of an industrial cartel.
Yes.
Now, in order to break up the industrial cartel, you don't go sue the cartel because they have the best lawyers in the world. You leave them alone. You sue the low man on the totem pole who's got to put up with state-paid lawyers. You sue the state board. You sue their expert witnesses. You sue the FDA. Anywhere you can sue government lawyers, you're better off because they're not generally known to be the shiftiest lawyers on the face of the earth. And you sue for different things, right? There is an action that's little used for some reason. If a official of the government refuses to do his duty, you sue him and ask the judge to order him to do his duty. It's called mandamus. And you sue the Secretary of Health and Human Services and ask him to purge his, the judge to order him to submit a report whereby he's going to purge the FDA and the National Institutes of Health of all irrational bias against various schools of medicine and of illegal conspiracies between them and manufacturing associations and private trade associations. And that gives you an opportunity to come in and prove to the judge that all those things are going on. And it gives you an opportunity to make the Secretary produce this evidence. You can file that anywhere in the United States because the federal government is everywhere. So you can sue them right here in Carmel if you had a federal court in Carmel. That's called mandamus.
Is it a writ of mandamus?
No, well, it used to be a writ of mandamus, but they've abolished the writ of mandamus and they have an action in the nature of mandamus, right? And you sue the federal government, and among other things, you allege that the highest duty that any federal official has, anywhere, at any time, is to obey the statutes, Constitution, and laws of the United States. And so they're busy running out violating the Sherman Antitrust Act every day. Every time they take a breath, they're doing that, so order them to obey it. And you tick off all the things that they're doing and ask the judge to have the secretary investigate this, report back to him in 90 days in writing what he's doing to purge his department of all this. And boy, you see bureaucrats taking cover, jumping under tables, jumping out of windows, and leaving. You might win or you might not, but you what we say down south, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. You raise a lot of hell about all this, and you get people wondering about it. That's what you do to the Fed stop over, the federal agents, right? And the state agents, you can usually sue them in their own state under the Antitrust Act. And every time you file a lawsuit, the next day you have a whole bunch of consumers coming in, filing an intervention and screaming their heads off, this is right, we've been screwed long enough, we're not gonna put up with it anymore. The judge may be able to control you and the litigants, but what the hell can he do with 2,000 consumers that are parading out in front of the courthouse carrying signs? He does what everybody else knows. Jesus, these things go away. And he'll call the lawyers and says, could you guys give me one side of the courthouse to get the jury in and out of? We'll let you all have the rest of it. Because you can't control consumers when they get ticked off. All right? And when you get the consumers ticked off, the news media come. And they say, what are you all ticked off about? And they say, well, we're going to talk to our lawyers. They'll tell you what we're ticked off about. And then you start handing the evidence to the news media, and sooner or later you're going to connect and you're going to have exposés. And the judge is going to sit in there and say, well, you guys knock it off, because I can't control these people, Your Honor. I'm sorry. We're going to have to do something. Or they're going to burn the courthouse down. Something's going to happen, right? Well, you sue them. You don't necessarily sue them with the intent of beating them in court, because if you do it right, they're already sliding down the razor blade, right? All you're going to do is grease it for them. I mean, I can't really get you to understand how close they are to the bottom. You have to sit there like several of us do and look at the figures on a daily basis. I'm sure Gary does that some. Watching the hospital closings, the breakup of financing arrangements and stuff like that. They're going to reach critical mass just like the Berlin Wall did in December, and it's not going to be that long before they do. And when they do, it's going to be awesome to behold. All you guys can stand back and say, no, there's a D in front of my AMD. I ain't one of them. Right? And somebody will replace them. Now, a lot of them will convert, right? They'll become instant homeopaths. I don't know how to spell that, but that's a sexual habits. By God, I'm gonna attend the weekend seminar now. I'm gonna be a homeopath. Where do you get one of them things, right?
Well, they sure became instant TMJers, I'll tell you that. You
Yeah,
get
well,
your colleagues
sure.
around that badmouthed the early TMJ guys, and then they all got on the bandwagon.
You-
Saw that.
You'll be able to go to L.A., Dallas, Atlanta. You won't be able to get a hotel room over there for guys holding herbology conferences for MDs, right? Typical MD. See one, do one, teach one. Hell yes, I've been a herbal doctor all my life. Why those damned allopaths, those rotten scoundrels, I'm glad they ran them out of town. I, sir, am an eclectic. I, sir, am a homeopath. I am a holistic. Because they're going where the bucks are, they always have. We don't have to worry about them. The only ones that are going to have any trouble are the OBs, and they can still make a living, or they can repair shoes or something like that. Or they can go to work for the midwives. You laugh, that's happening, right? They go where the bucks are. When their empire crashes, they will personally, in the last century when all this happened once before, this has all happened before, right? They all became homeopaths overnight, or some of them had two doors, you know. Joe Blow, MD, homeopathic physician. Joe Blow, MD, allopathic physician. Not from, what do you want? Step right in. Get your murder. Over here, we'll give it to you in the 3,000th decennial dilution, whichever way you want it. Whatever you want, sir, I got it. And they will be available. They will be weekend seminars, 2-week training courses, certification, consensus, and off they are, practicing homeopathy.
They're already doing it.
Well, you know, the pharmaceutical industry is busy buying up herb houses, vitamin houses, right and left.
Yeah.
They see a sea change coming too. We can't continue to pay over $500 billion a year for health care in this country. And don't think it's because the people don't know what I'm talking about. They certainly know all these things I'm saying too. Right? They got some pretty smart PhD economists in Washington. They know a lot more about monopolies than I do. And they know about the other schools of practice. They just want to give these guys their shot. Now these guys are blown it. I mean, they're over the brink. You couldn't stop them anymore. They're like a dinosaur. If you shot it in the tail, it might take it a year or two for the message to reach the head. But they are in their death throes, and they will not be here in another 2 or 3 years in the form that they're here now. Some of them will still be around. Most of them will still be around. But their system is what I'm talking about. Their system is a goner. And maybe when that happens, they'll be off of your case. But death throes can be dangerous. An animal thrashing about in its dying throes, it still has fangs and talons. And the bureaucracy that has served them so well still will do their bidding. And they will crush some dentist heads if you guys make any noise about you're not going to put any more mercury in there. They're going to take the mercury out. That's like robbing their hen house, right? And that's why they're after you. Outside of that, they don't give a damn what you do. But if you're doing things that make people well, you're threatening their existence and they're after you. Now, when you go around saying this about these guys, I want to caution you, never say it in an angry fashion. Anger turns people off. Laugh at the bastards. They can't stand it and everybody else will understand your message. That's the one thing we've learned in this movement. Never, ever get white-faced, shake your fists. Always laugh at them. That's why this article, if you ever bother to read, is written tongue-in-cheek about them. But you can tell truths that way too, and they hang with people. They are dependent on toxicity for their living. And you guys have been unwittingly the source of their toxicity for 150 years. They didn't have to take any of the blame, didn't have to take any of the heat. You were putting it in, they were taking the gold out. Why do you think they hate Hal Huggins? He's the first one to tumble on that, so to hell with him, I'll take the gold out myself. Right? And maybe some of you have been doing that. Have y'all been sinning? Y'all been taking mercury out? You've been depriving those poor starving Alipavs of their third Ferrari. Fellers, you've got to love your neighbor. You can't go around doing things like that to these poor Alipavs. They're really their friends. If you don't believe it, ask them. They'll tell you that they're your friends. And they'll be your friends just as long as you keep packing that mercury in. Because you have been the main source of their income for the last 150 years, and a completely unsuspected source, right? No one can trace it to them. It's not their fault. Hey, we quit using mercury 100 years ago, right? We haven't used mercury in 100 years. Oh, the dentist over there used it for something, but we don't have anything to do with that. Boy, the very thought of you quit using mercury and there is high panic, high anxiety in the AMA. And most of the things they got coming after you is for that reason. I'm quite serious. I try to be funny when I say it because I believe the message goes over with humor better than it does with anger, but that's who's after you. And what you have to do to put a stop to it, sue the National Council Against Health Fraud. They aren't very smart. They don't have good lawyers. They just sued me and a whole bunch of other guys, and the judge kicked them out on a preliminary motion. Kicked them out 2 weeks ago. He said in the order dismissing us all that they were accusing us of health fraud. He understood from that some of us were doctors and were treating our patients in a way that they didn't approve of. That's not what the law means by fraud. So that's that. They don't like to use the word quack anymore. They will use it, but they would rather use health fraud. They were all set up to pass this big act that Claude Pepper introduced in 1984 on health fraud, and a whole bunch of us, maybe some of you guys too, got together and did a big write-in campaign, and they withdrew it. But they have their health fraud machinery all set into motion, and they can't quit using it. But the more you get into their pockets by taking the mercury out of your patients so that they can have to quit taking the gold out of your patients, the more they're going to use the word quack about you. That's the only interest they have in what you do. It's the only thing they care about. And they have sicked their boys on you. And you will be, if you don't know Dr. Renner and Dr. Barrett and Dr. Herbert, you got a real treat coming. Gary knows them. Gary's met them all. They're real nice guys. Right? Death, destruction, and taxes.
You intimate in your, that this is a contrived thing, that the mercury's in there, and my coming on the scene as an MD is that we've accidentally discovered it, and it's time to do something about it. But you intimate that it's contrived.
Well, I mean, my research into the history was, you had what is it, association of
Well, I know the old Pass used to give mercury purgatives, and they used to leave you and do things like that.
oh yeah, I mean, right.
But the contriving is what I'm asking.
Well, look, they had a dental association in 1850. It was what is it, Society of Dental Surgeons.
American College of Dental Surgeons.
Right. Now, they came out very strongly against mercury, said it was toxic, And they required all of their members to sign an oath that they would never put mercury amalgams in the patient's head. And the association broke up about the issue of freedom of the dentist's choice. And at that time, the ADA was formed, and of course, they were quite friendly to mercury. And they got some help from the same people that were helping the AMA, and it's no accident that you guys got the unbridled right to prescribe pharmaceuticals. After all, you're out there pushing the same sponsor's product for them, right? And they greased the way for all of this. They got you your licensure, they got you all these wonderful things, and they've forgotten about you. When they wrote the cookbook for the Allopaths, they forgot to put a chapter in for dentist. And now somebody's saying, wait, these damn dentists have discovered the secret. And we got to do something about getting those dentists in line. We got to get a chapter on consensus in dentistry right away. And the only place to get that's the ADA, right? What does the ADA do when they set it up? They do an incestuous review of their own journals, and we can find absolutely no evidence whatsoever that mercury is toxic. It doesn't say so in our journal, and if it was true, it'd be in our journal. Fellows, there's no scientific evidence to support that. Isn't about that the position the ADA takes?
Absolutely.
So when you sue the National Council Against Health Fraud, sue the ADA. I know their lawyer. She's not very smart either. I go to seminars with her all the time. Right? She can't hold her liquor very well. I can beat her. You sue the ADA, you sue the State Society, which is hard, and you sue them all for antitrust, for conspiracy. And it's the day you file the lawsuit, you have 2,000 consumers running in, intervening in the lawsuit, and screaming they're tired of all this, and that these people are all anti-environmentalists, and they're committing what we call toxic torts. They're trying, you know, they're not content to put the mercury in the water, they're putting it in the people too. Yes, sir.
Have you got some peak times when it's a good time to sue them? What do you
I consult astrologers for that. I believe in anything that's unorthodox.
Do you wait until they call, like me, is it before they investigate me before
Oh,
the committee?
the evening
And then
bef-
have all these folks go down and sue them the next
The
day?
evening before the first hearing, right? The hearing's usually on a weekend, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna have a hearing on Saturday, Friday about noon, federal marshals descend on them. Of course, you sue each member of the board as an individual, right? That's what we did in Kansas, and it was very, very effective. We had TMJ dentists over there that were picking on them. We just waited until, like, Saturday.
Saturday morning. And they-
Meeting was Saturday morning. On Friday about noon, all the members of the dental board woke up and
With subpoenas to show up.
no, they got served with a lawsuit about that thing. And they could call the dental board's lawyer and say, what does that all mean? He says, God, I don't know, it's gonna take me 3 days to read it. We better call up those lawyers representing that doctor and get a continuance on the hearing. They couldn't find us because we were all hidden. We showed up the next morning for the hearing. We want justice. By God, you son of a bitches made us come to this hearing. We here, we got the evidence, let's have the hearing. And all these guys sitting there pasty-faced looking through this big lawsuit, and have their lawyers there and everything, the attorney general's there saying, where the hell did you get it? Oh, God, we haven't got a budget to take care of this kind of lawsuit. We worked the problem out, right? As a matter of fact, we worked the problem out and still went on with the lawsuit for a while. We got a couple of hidden weapons. I got a old amalgam-free dentist and TMJ dentist over in Florida that just got ticked off with the whole thing and quit practicing and went to law school. He's only been practicing law for a year or two, and he's not real secure as a lawyer, but he is a tiger at cross-examining dental experts. And he is our secret weapon. And, you know,
Can I ask who that is?
Tom Gordon is his name. He's a Florida lawyer, Florida dentist. And Tom is an infant as a lawyer. He hasn't been practicing law but about a year and a half, but he is a real tiger at cross-examining their expert witnesses. And he turns them every which way but loose. I mean, he practices the most massive overkill I've ever seen. And Tom went out there and convinced us all that all these experts were ganging up and really trying to put this guy out of business so they could take over his practice. So we continued the lawsuit against them, the experts, you know, until they saw the light and coughing up some of the gold too. You know, but the board members, they just went into total shock when they got this lawsuit. And we had Dr. Lukauer file some affidavits with us about the board and how they were acting and that sort of thing. And we also filed an action in the Quo Ranto to remove them from office for gross incompetence in office and breaking the law while they're in office. You just throw in everything you can. And it makes the newspapers, and it makes their patients see that their dentist's name is in the paper, somebody saying ugly things about him and all that. And, you know, I mean, they start all these fights. We don't ever start. I just don't believe in defense. The only defense to me is an offense. And the more offensive you are, the better defense you're putting on. And just never stop kicking their asses. Call them everything. Call them all kind of names. But if you speak about them in public, always be humorous about it. Always smile. You know, if you can get people laughing at them, they can't stand it, and people will learn your message much better by humor than they will by anger. You know, if you always, when you go to these hearings, if you can just learn to be humorous about what you're saying. And when you leave, they say, this guy says the most outrageous things. He said these guys are thieves and they're liars, but he was smiling the whole time he said it. What does he know? Right? I'm serious. When you get into social movements, never get angry. I mean, you get mad as hell, but always smile. Right? And say the most outrageous things about this guy, but laugh while you're saying it. Say kind things about him once in a while. See, he can't help being that way. I knew his daddy. I mean, he comes about honestly. He's just an allopath. He can't stop stealing. Don't hold it against him. He's not all that bad a fellow. He's just an allopath. Now look at him and say, what is that guy? You know, what does he know? Why is he saying this? And they can't get mad at you, right? And the more you laugh at them, the more synaptic separation they undergo. Because these guys have got a trade school education, an incomplete personality, and infantile delusions of omnipotence and grandeur. If you take them out of their little milieu and just treat them like a human being, they decompensate and they turn into little balls of shit and roll them in the They don't know how to dress, they don't know how to eat, they don't know how to do anything. Their wives have to buy all their clothes, right? And that's why they hate lawyers so bad, right? We don't, not particularly unkind to them, we just take them out of their milieu and into ours and play with them. They're used to being the ultimate authority figure, and all of a sudden they find out there are other authority figures. You know, and they can't stand it. But just laugh at them and sue them. And in a couple of years, this problem will probably solve itself. I have to agree with Gary and Hulett. I don't think you're going to get too far with the legislature right now. That's in the future. The legislature is going to have to do something because the legislature is tasked with paying for all this. And it's getting pretty expensive. And each year it gets worse and worse. And they're looking for a way out. Now, the legislatures never understand the issues. They don't have time to understand the issues. They just, they have staffers that give them, on a 3x5 card and block letters what the complex issue is about. And as Gary says, they take the money from both sides, and then when the offers are equal, they occasionally decide the whole issue on its merits. They will unblushingly take bribes from both sides. That's in the best tradition of American politics, and there's anything you can do about it. You ever see them greet each other in the halls of the legislature? They always hug. You ever notice they always hug each other? And they have this hug where one hand always slides in the front of the other guy's. That's where they pass the money. I mean, watch the legislature sometime, you can see them doing that. And they'll take the money from all comers. Now, you're pouring your money in a sinkhole if you spend a whole lot of money on lobbyists at this time. In the near future, it may be an appropriate time. Right now, you got to get the message out. These guys don't have time to understand the message. They never will understand, but they'll feel the heat. They start getting letters. They don't read these letters, but they weigh them and measure them. And a guy comes in and he says, we got 14,000 letters last week. He said, how many of them were handwritten? 2/3 of them. Goddamn, I'm going to do something about that problem, whatever it is. Homeopaths. Well, I don't care what queers do, but just draw the line. Give them whatever they want. That's just about how it goes in their little minds, right? They're always so glad to see you if you're from their hometown. But They'll take you around, give you a tour of the Capitol. They'll lie like rugs. But when they start to feel the heat, when they start getting letters and telegrams, handwritten letters, people call them up at night saying, I want to know what you're going to do about this problem, and then they'll do something. They won't do something about it. They'll tell their staff to do something about it. And that's the time when you can help them. You can do the staff's work. You can present the bills that they need. A good place to start, you know, on the mercury issue is actually the consumer warning. And I think you need to go a little further.
You want to sum up a little bit, then we get some questions, and then...
Sure, I can. Just, anybody got any more questions?
I'm not trying to cut it short, but I mean, if you got some questions you want to ask them, go ahead.
Bill, how many instances of medical boards being taken into federal court are you aware of? Jim Fervatera filed one out here, and the judge didn't give us anything other than say, come on back if the state beats you up too bad. Have you heard?
About 4 that I know of, Gary, and they're all under antitrust laws. And it's become easier recently. New York State Liquor Control Board, now there's a doctrine in antitrust law, you know, that the states can't be sued for carrying out their regulatory functions.
Yes.
But then there's a 823 liquor court case where the United States Supreme Court disbanded the New York Liquor Control Board because he said that they were exhibiting a flimsy veil of regulation under lack of regulation. So they have broken through. And there's another thing I think you all ought to know about, or any of you know about the George Guest case.
A little bit.
All right, George Guest is an MD in North Carolina who practices allopathic medicine in a hospital in the clinic, and when he's off duty, he practices homeopathic medicine at home. The board tried him for practicing homeopathic medicine, which didn't measure up to the standards of the community, and they took his license. The Superior Court said, give it back to him. You haven't, you know, this is just a squabble between 2 groups of doctors. The state appealed it. And after going through a big rigmarole about whether the Supreme Court or the appellate court or the Court of Appeals should hear it, they both decided the Court of Appeals should hear it, and they did hear it. And they took the board to task and said, you can't take a doctor's license simply for doing something that you don't approve of if you don't show that it hurts anybody. And their language, some of it is very important. It says, all right, the state can only regulate for protection of the public. Its purpose can only have been to protect the public. Thus, implicit in the provision granting the board power to revoke a medical license for practices not in conformity with the standards of acceptable and prevailing medical practice in this state are the requirement that the non-conforming practice endanger or harm the public in some way. Without that implicit requirement, the statute would permit the Board of Medical Examiners to suspend the license of any physician whose methods or practices, though harmless or even beneficial to the patients and the public, differ in some particular from those of most practitioners. Such unqualified power by an administrative agency would be contrary to the public interest and was not the legislature's to give in any event. That's a vitally important case. That's an appellate court saying that you can't be delicensed.
You make copies of that tonight?
Here is a copy of the decision.
You want me to
Take it over and keep it.
Well, let me right now, what I've got here, I've got some, materials in here. I don't know what it's gonna cost, but I'm gonna take them to the all-night copy place. Everybody would like a copy, raise your hand, so I can get an idea how many copies to make, you know? Okay, well, that's like 25 people out on the cover, okay? So, it'll be a lot of good reading. I hope you're not driving home.
Do you need any money for this? Do you want us to give you some?
You give it to us tomorrow when we find out what the cost is.
I think it's vitally important that all of you be aware of that case. All that happened in North Carolina, that's precedent all over the United States. And what that court said is, just because you don't like what they're doing, I mean you can take their licenses. You have to actually allege and prove that they hurt somebody. Yes, sir.
Okay, now, how are you defending against this Medicare thing that in the last minute said any hospital committee can judge the doctors there and be totally out of the sway of being sued for their findings?
Oh, I don't know.
They grant immunity to a hospital committee that is investigating one of their staff.
Who did that? Congress did that?
Yeah, that was part of a Medicare ruling that went back in November not last year, but the year before. It was a tail end of it, it was an amendment on something that went through in Medicare.
Is it a rule?
It is I believe it is a federal law with the Medicare, that came in with the Medicare deal.
Only
It
thing
said,
that-
it said essentially that doctors cannot be held liable if they are, quote, giving due process law, et cetera. Now, one of the things that I've done in my own community to help myself against that is that it further appends that unless you can show malice of any one of the members on the committee, and so every patient that I hear that says some doctor said this about you and some doctor said this, I keep a copy of the patient and what that doctor said, because I know damn well that those allergists and those people will be on the board when they start trying to run me out of town, and I'll have them disqualified.
That's it. And also, you know, you can sue them as individuals. That doesn't have anything to do with their capacity as a reviewer, right?
It's essentially, the net effect is that you can't hold them, you can't sue them for being on that committee and investigating you.
That's right, but if you show that they stepped outside of that role and had a personal motive, that's blown, right?
That's right, it's pierced there, but you gotta have some strong reason to say, well, hell, all these guys have been against me ever since then.
What about the offense again? In other words, they use agents, you know, that are wired to go in and provoke that kind of a response, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the judge would think about that kind of evidence when
Well,
you're manufacturing.
of course, it
But
depends
they
on
use
who
the same against, you know.
Depends on who the judge is. I mean, we have, as I was explaining to Mark, we have 3 rules about winning, right? Know the law, know the facts, and know the judge. And of the 3, guess which one's the most important? However, most judges are honest men. There may be a few crooked judges. Judges generically don't like this kind of secret tape recording undercover evidence. They might put up with it in a narcotics case. They're not going to put up with it in a medical practice case. All the judges I've appeared before are very open about that sort of thing. They want to lay it out on the table. And judges generally like alternative practitioners. I've tried a couple of cases where the judge almost blew it, wanting to talk to my client in chambers about getting treated as soon as he got. You know, judges don't share the bias of the medical establishment. As a matter of fact, most of them, after 25 years of listening to these guys lie under oath in varying cases, have a rather low opinion of the medical profession anyhow.
Yeah.
And all the judges I've appeared before in these things bent over backwards to try to give us a fair shake. There was one in Atlanta that threw us out of court because this happens, he was too lazy, right? And he said, oh, what is this coming in here in this court, all these wild-eyed naturopaths and consumers and screaming and everything. He says, throw that case, tell them to go to state court. And of course, we went to state court and beat the hell out of them. And to the chagrin of the Georgia State Board of Medical Examiners right now, and we got naturopaths practicing in Georgia under a court order that was on a lawsuit they started. Right, and we did it a real nasty way because none of us appeared on behalf of the naturopaths. We just did the paperwork. And we'd sit them up at night and tell them what to say in court the next day, so that the Attorney General had the ignominy of being defeated by unrepresented naturopaths in court. And, you know, the judge really got in the whole issue and held that they had a constitutional right to practice. I don't know if what he thought about naturopathy before, but he gave him a very fair hearing. In fact, he leaned over backwards. And the Attorney General had been working 5 years to put these guys out of business. And now he can't.
Question, you said you had some overheads. We don't have the projector here, but maybe, how long do you think it would take to show that? Maybe we can do it tomorrow morning.
We'll do it sometime tomorrow. Well, I just wanted to show you mainly those, well, I got some diagrams about the conspiracy
Okay, well, we should look at that.
tomorrow, and I got my favorite thing about the AIDS virus.
All right. Why don't we call it a night, then we'll start early tomorrow. Let's try it.
7?
No, as close to 8:30 as possible, okay? Thank you very much.
All right.